The real impetus for the development of large-scale sculpture in Buddhism does come from strong influence from the West. The style that will develop that is particularly important is generally referred to as Gandharan, or a style that originates from the region of Gandhara. Gandhara, that territory, will be territory heavily influenced by the conquest of Alexander the Great. And I have in the lower right a map that shows underlying it the red outlines, referencing the great empire of the Persians under the Achaemenids. And they would be the folks providing influence to Ashoka, for example. Alexander is going to come through, and in 327 BCE, he is going to extend his reach all the way into what we would count as India today. All of the yellow stuff that you're looking at on my map references Alexander's conquest. The region that we're talking about, and I think it's maybe easiest to see right up here on this map, is the region that is going to remain in contact with the West. And it is possible, actually, that Roman carvers will be in this region. Alexander isn't going to maintain this, but the contact is made. The routes will be open, so trade routes. And as a result of Western influence, a rather astonishing style is going to develop that will end up serving Buddhism. There are folks who are going to come in from Central Asia, from Mongolia and Northwest China. Nomadic individuals are going to migrate into this region. They're going to accept greater vehicle, Mahayana Buddhism. And the style of art that they select to represent this will be Gandharan. So let's take a look at it. Both of the objects in the slide right now are from Gandhara and represent this extraordinary Western influence that comes into contact with Buddhism. The one that's in our book, Figure 311, is on the left. The other is very similar and related to the basic elements of style. This is probably not what you're expecting when you think of Buddhist carving. The drapery here is very heavy and deliberate. It should remind you of Roman creations, maybe even suspiciously of a Roman toga. The flesh of our figures is very weighty and physically present. It isn't in line with the, I'm going to say, intense spiritual nature of Buddhism in general. If you also look at the figure, you're going to see not a particularly convincing one, but nevertheless one that is present, and I'm talking about a weight shift. If you go for the left knee here and the left knee over here, you're going to see that our figure seems to be moving. And that's coming out of the contrapposto, or the weight shift, which is a part of Greco-Roman heritage that's been transferred to the region of Gandhara. I like the one on the right a little bit because you do get a sense of physical presence, a little bit of tummy, for example, going on in the image that is located on our right. When we look at more traditional images of the Buddha, you're going to see how wrong these images actually are. These are much more worldly than depictions that should be created to serve the Buddha. Much fleshier, much heavier, much more focused on the garments, which of course belong to the world, and on the actions of the human form. I wanted to see this one also because it's located in the Philly Museum, so you have an actual opportunity to get close to this. It is another statue of the Buddha. It is from Gandhara. It has the same kind of heaviness, the physicality, and the emphasis on the drapery, yet at the same time, it maintains elements of traditional identification for the figure of the Buddha, including in this case, and I'll talk more about those in a minute, the elongated earlobes. If we go here, the semi-closed eyes, as if the Buddha is looking down at us, perhaps to help us, maybe a slight hint of a smile, a very calm face. And one of the attributes of the Buddha, if you look right here, I think you can see it, is webbed fingers. So there's webbing. It's believed this is kind of birthmark indicating his sacred pathway. This and other elements that help to identify the Buddha are characteristically present, but they're present in a spectacularly Western, solid, physical form. Mr. O'Reilly goes further and he talks about these figures having, quote, a Roman nose, cupid bow lips, and wavy locks of hair. So let's take another look at details. The detailed top up here is the one that you actually have in O'Reilly's textbook. It is a standing image of the Buddha with a mustache, by the way. And if you look at on the left side of the screen, the Apollo Belvedere or a detail thereof, I think you can get a sense of the similar nature of the carvings in Gandhara, as in the lower right, that's another Gandharan head of the Buddha. The carving of the lips in particular are copied from the West, and there is a strong shape to the bow shape the Cupid might hold, running between the upper lip and the lower lip. The hair is also similar. It's very heavy. It's given a lot of emphasis, and there is an overall sense of physicality to the images. These are a very strange blending then of Buddhism with Western aesthetics. And I probably would make the argument that because of that, they are not necessarily meeting the true needs of Buddhism. This influence, however, does open up the world of Buddhism to the acceptance of images. And I also expect that there's actually a sense of the need to have images to compete with other faiths, other belief systems, which are engaged in the use of images. So in this period, Buddhism is opening up and accepting images. Now let's see what a typical one should actually look like. But it is because of the Western influence that this opening to images occurs. This is one of the most famous images of Buddha ever carved. It's figure 313 in our textbook, and today it is located in the Sarnath Museum. That is the site, and that's where it originally was placed. That's the site of the first sermon of the Buddha. So it's in the Deer Park, essentially. And there are references to that with the Buddha seated in a lotus pose. Remember, that's a pose of meditation, with his 2 feet over his inner leg. And we have his disciples, and this is a highly symmetrical work of art. We have 3 over here, we have 3 over here. And in the very center, that is the wheel of enlightenment. The mudra that the Buddha is engaged in showing is the mudra setting the wheel in motion, also referred to as the Dharma chakra. It is a reference to not only setting the wheel in motion, but also to presenting to his students the Eightfold Path, which he is pointing out by counting them on his fingers. He's located on a throne with a halo behind him or a sun disk, because I think that round glow of light, very much carved with fancy detail behind the Buddha, does come out of the traditions of Indus Valley with a solar imagery. So I think we can link this back in time to the sources of ancient India. But what this immediately tells us is that this is Mahayana, this is greater vehicle, because the Buddha is presented in a divine way, seated on a throne with a solar disk, everything with great formality and with great symmetry. The throne itself is a lion throne, and I guess you might be able to see them best over here. There's a little guy here and a little guy here. The lions, in general, refer to wisdom, to strength, and to royalty. But the Buddha has often been called not just the sage of the Shakya clan, but also the lion of the Shakya clan. So Shakyamuni may indeed refer to the lion nature of the Buddha, meaning strength and power, but also the roar of his teachings. So he speaks, and with his speech, we have the roar of truth and of Dharma. This is not a portrait of the Buddha. It is instead a depiction of the nature of Buddha, of his essence, and it's also intended to imply some of his teachings. Probably the artist who carved this actually meditated on Buddha or Buddhism and the teachings of the Buddha before he actually began to create this. This is actually a piece that you would originally have approached and used as a tool of meditation. In other words, you, as a follower of the Buddha, would come and in front of this, you would begin to meditate yourself. So it is an object that is calm and relaxed and conducive to meditation. It also conveys the nature of the Buddha. There is a calmness on the face of the Buddha. There is no bone structure emphasized at all in the body. The surfaces are rounded and swelling. And I think that relates to earlier Hindu carvings as well. The spiritual nature of this carving, though, lacks the dynamism that we would find in Hindu images because the teachings of the Buddha focus on meditation, the three M's, but meditation in particular, and is very, very spiritual in nature, giving this object stability. In fact, the Buddha fits into a lovely triangle. So we get a triangle with a very wide base that adds to a sense of balance, symmetry, and stability that is conducive to calmness and also, in this case, to meditation. The head of the Buddha perhaps is a little bit out of proportion, emphasizing the large head as a symbol of wisdom for the Buddha. But as one of the characteristics you can expect to find for the Buddha, that wisdom that he contains in his brain is just so large it can't even fit inside. So, what we get, and I think we could see it maybe best here, is a protuberance of wisdom on top of his head. It appears as a kind of top knot that references the extraordinary wisdom of the Buddha. In addition to the semi closed eyes, the calm demeanor of the face, the top knot, we also have elongated earlobes that are characteristic and, as we'll see shortly, reference the princely past of the Buddha. This is a relief carving. It is not an exactly a freestanding image of the Buddha. I would argue that this image is very successful as a Buddhist piece of sculpture. It conveys the spiritual nature of Buddhism, the emphasis on meditation, and also indicates the teachings of the Buddha or the Dharma. This is a little bit of a cheat sheet for you to look at if you want to be able to recognize some of the standard imagery within Buddhist carvings, including some of the mudras. This is again the do not be afraid, but it shows the webbed fingers. All of these are birthmarks that are associated with the Buddha, or perhaps symbols of his past. And in particular, let me reference the elongated earlobes because the Buddha wasn't born with those. The Buddha acquired those while he was a prince living in a palace, a life of luxury. He by wearing heavy jewels on his ears, as was characteristic at the time, he distended his earlobes. Elongated earlobes would be a reference to status, as you can see in these two modern photographs of women, both coming from Southeast Asia today. So the tradition lingers. For Buddhists, the extended earlobes of the Buddha reference his past as a prince and underscore that he turned his back on that life of luxury in order to come to a solution for us to eliminate suffering.